Have you ever wondered why some students effortlessly breeze past the 170 mark on the LSAT, while others struggle to break 160, even when they've studied for the same number of hours? What if I told you there are some little-known strategies that can add 10 or 15 points to your score faster than you'd ever imagine? Whether you've taken the LSAT before or you're just starting out, these tactics can transform your study routine and help you crush the test with a score of 175 plus. The LSAT is challenging, but not impossible. In fact, the difference between a 160 and a 175 usually comes down to subtle techniques that most students overlook. By sharing with you these 10 lesser-known strategies today, I'll show you not only how to streamline your study process, but also how to boost your confidence on test day. Today, I'll share with you everything from a game-changing skip technique to the Socratic review method, a tool I teach my one-on-one coaching students that's helped them break into the 170s. Each of these can add crucial points to your score. Let's dive in, but first, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, the first strategy I want to share with you today is note-taking in reading comprehension. Most students assume they've just got to read the passages carefully and then do detailed summaries of each paragraph. But the big secret I want to share with you today is that using just brief notes on scratch paper to organize your thoughts and maintain focus actually works a whole lot better. If you write down just a few keywords for each paragraph, that'll be enough to engage your brain, it'll reduce mental clutter, and it'll make it easier to refer back to the passage when you're answering questions without overwhelming you with the need to document everything, helping you save valuable time, and you'll still be able to refer back to the passage when you're answering specific questions. So here's how to implement the brief note-taking strategy. For each paragraph, just jot down 1 or 2 words that summarize its main idea or tone. You're not doing 2 or 3 sentences, and you can also use shorthand to save time, focusing on the structure rather than every single detail. For example, you might note transitions like conflict, example, or author's opinion. Now, back when I first began studying for the LSAT, I would constantly lose track of details in dense passages, even when I had taken excruciatingly detailed notes. Instead, by just jotting down quick notes, like author disagrees or main example here, I was able to stay engaged and make fewer mistakes without wasting valuable time, and my accuracy skyrocketed in just a few weeks. Now, the second strategy I want to share with you today is the 5-second rule for logical reasoning. The reason it's the 5-second rule is because decision fatigue is real. When you stare at a question for too long, you tend to second guess yourself. Now, here's why this works. This technique is all about trusting your initial instincts. If an answer looks correct after a thorough read, just pick it and move on. If you overthink, you're more likely to make mistakes. So here's how to implement this. After you read the question and the possible answers, pick the one that best fits within just 5 seconds of narrowing down your top 2. Then you revisit it only if you have leftover time at the end. Now, I had a student who was constantly running out of time on logical reasoning. They'd overanalyze every single question, but by adopting the 5-second rule, they shaved off more than 5 minutes for the section as a whole, which allowed them to double-check their uncertain answers, and their score jumped from a 162 to a 171 in just 2 months. Now, the third strategy I want to share with you today is the art of strategic skipping. The reason you want to implement a technique like strategic skipping is because not all questions are worth the same mental effort in the moment, but all questions are worth the same for your score. Some are easy, low-hanging fruit, but others can be major time sinks. And so, if you can quickly spot which questions are more challenging for you, you skip them initially and tackle the ones you know you can nail. Then, you return to the harder ones with the leftover time. So, during your first pass through the section, answer only the questions you feel confident about in less than 1 minute. Skip any that feel like they require more than a minute of concentrated effort. Then, in your second pass, you can spend your remaining time on the skipped questions. Back when I finally got my scores into the mid-170s, I realized It wasn't because I knew everything on the test. I wasn't getting perfect 180s, but rather I had learned to be strategic. I had learned where to spend my time and where to skip. This allowed me to rack up the easy points first and then to carefully attack the tougher questions later. Now, the fourth strategy I want to share with you today is the sleep cycle brain hack, because most students don't realize that your brain continues solving problems while you're asleep. This means your prep can extend beyond your waking hours if you structure your study sessions correctly. Research shows that studying difficult material right before bed improves recall and understanding because your brain consolidates learning during sleep. And so you want to end your study sessions with more difficult material. That could be challenging logical reasoning questions or difficult reading comp passages. You use this time to spend 5 or 10 minutes revisiting concepts or question types you struggled with during the day. And you want to make sure you're sleeping for at least 7 hours per night to allow your brain to consolidate this information. Now, I personally had a breakthrough in conditional reasoning after reviewing a particularly tough question right before bed. The next morning, that concept suddenly seemed that much clearer, as if my brain had worked through it overnight. Now, the fifth strategy I want to share with you today is to focus on the method of reasoning in the stimulus, because far too many students spend way too much time trying to categorize question stems like strengthen or weaken, instead of focusing on the real core of the problem, which is the method of reasoning in the stimulus. Now, the LSAT, of course, is designed to test your ability to analyze reasoning. If you understand how the argument in the stimulus works or doesn't work, you'll be better equipped to tackle any question type you come across. So for each question, start by identifying the conclusion, then the evidence in the stimulus. Ask yourself, how is the conclusion supported or not supported by the evidence? Now, don't just focus on the question stem. Instead, train yourself to break down arguments systematically so that any question type will feel more manageable. Now, one of my students was struggling with necessary assumption and flaw questions because they were fixated on categorizing by question stem. But once they shifted to analyzing the method of reasoning in the stimulus first, they started seeing connections between the argument and the answer choices that they had previously missed, and their logical reasoning score improved almost immediately. Now, the sixth strategy I want to share with you today is to use the Socratic review method. Most students review practice questions passively. They read the explanations and then just move on. But true mastery comes from the Socratic review method, a process of self-interrogation to identify and fix gaps in your reasoning. This works because by questioning yourself, you uncover not only why you got a question wrong, but also why your thought process led you there. This builds long-term transferable skills for the LSAT. And so for each missed question, you want to write down why you picked the wrong answer and why the right answer is correct. Ask yourself, what assumption was I making and why didn't I notice the trap in this particular answer choice? You want to use this method on at least 5 to 10 questions per exam that you take to refine your reasoning. Now, one of my students raised their score from 165 to 175 by adopting the Socratic review method. They stopped at just memorizing explanations and instead started engaging deeply with their thought processes. And by test day, they could confidently identify traps and answer choices designed to mislead them. Now, if you'd like my help adopting a strategy like the Socratic review method on your journey to scoring a 170 plus on test day, you could check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out on your journey to 170 plus. We incorporate the Socratic review method in our courses, our small group classes, and our private one-on-one coaching program to help you adopt it for yourself. Feel free to reach out. I'm glad to help. Now, the seventh strategy I want to share with you today is the two-test simultaneous review method. Here's how it works. Many people take one practice test, score it, review their mistakes, and then move on to the next. And that approach is okay, especially if you're using the Socratic review method, but you can do even better by simultaneously reviewing two tests. This allows you to compare your performance across more questions and spot recurring patterns in your mistakes more easily. So to implement this, take two practice tests within the span of just a couple of days. After you complete both of them, review them side by side. You can then identify which questions consistently trip you up across both tests, and then focus your next study session specifically on these question types. Now, back when I was studying for the LSAT, I discovered I was consistently missing necessary assumption questions because I was able to spot the pattern more easily when I had more material to analyze. This helped me realize I still had a blind spot in identifying what had to be true for an argument to work. And once I honed in on that question type, my accuracy skyrocketed. Now, the 8th strategy I want to share with you today is the bulletproof outline for reading comprehension. I mentioned earlier that you want to take brief notes, but you also want to make sure your notes are structured and consistent from passage to passage, because reading comp will become so much easier for you if you've already figured out what your note-taking structure looks like. And so a bulletproof outline helps you track the author's tone, the main idea of the passage, and the purpose of the passage. This structure drastically reduces confusion when you return to the passage later to find specific details. And so to implement this, jot down just one word or one phrase capturing each paragraph's main idea. Then you want to note the author's attitude with just a single bullet point. Is it positive? Is it negative? Or is it neutral? You also want to note any pivotal words or data points that might pop up in the questions. Now, when I personally started employing a bulletproof outline for reading comp, this allowed me to stop getting tricked by questions about the author's tone or the relationship between two ideas. Suddenly, reading comp felt like a puzzle I could actually solve with confidence rather than blind guesswork. Now, the 9th strategy I want to share with you today is spaced repetition for long-term retention. Now, cramming might feel good in the moment. It will lead to short-term gains, but those gains quickly fade. In contrast, spaced repetition makes sure you remember the concepts you learned so that you don't have to relearn them a week later. Now, the reason this works is because cognitive science shows that reviewing material at gradually increasing intervals cements information in your long-term memory, moving it from the short-term to the long-term. And so to implement this, you want to have a study schedule that revisits each topic after 1 day, then 3 days, then 7 days, then 14 days. And you want to focus on the type of questions you keep missing, not just the exact questions themselves. Now, at LSAT Unplugged, we incorporate spaced repetition into our personalized day-by-day study plans we create for all of our students, whether you're taking the LSAT in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, or 6+ months or more. If you'd like my help putting together your personalized study plan, you can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, the 10th strategy I want to share with you today is total simulation to stress test your brain. Practice tests, of course, are great. We recommend doing them. We build them into our study plans, but test day stress is still going to be another beast entirely. If you engage in total simulation during your practice tests, you'll cultivate the mental stamina for the real thing. Now, here's why this works. Total simulation allows you to mimic the real testing environment, including breaks, pacing, and even potential distractions. By practicing under stressful conditions, you reduce surprises on test day. And so you want to pick a consistent time of day to simulate all your practice tests, ideally the time your actual LSAT is scheduled, and then you're completing every section as though it's game day. You're timing strictly, you're following the break schedule, and you're limiting distractions, but maybe strategically incorporating some, again, to simulate test day. Now, I had a student who would take practice tests whenever was convenient for them, sometimes at midnight, sometimes in the afternoon with music playing. But after we started simulating real test conditions, including the 10-minute break and the fact that you're not allowed to check your phone during the test, their anxiety on actual test day dropped dramatically because it felt like just another practice run. And so you now have 10 powerful, lesser-known strategies that can supercharge your LSAT prep. If you implement even just a few of these, you'll already separate yourself from the majority of test takers stuck in a cycle of mediocre scores. If you adopt all 10 of these, you're on the fast track toward that elusive 175 plus. And if you'd like my help adopting these strategies, incorporating them into your LSAT schedule at LSAT Unplugged, we'll help you put it all together with a personalized day-by-day study plan, pair it with private one-on-one coaching, small group classes, and on-demand video courses. You can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.